Shalom and welcome to podcast 32 of 144. I am your host, or hostess, Dr. Cynthia Marie Whitley, also known as Kashona. This is podcast 32 of 144. Today we will talk about the prayer of Jabez as I reminisce when I was a young teenage girl. Listen for lessons. Peace and shalom. As a young woman or old teenager at about 19, I was always anxious to visit a fellow friend's home who was playing housewife, as I desired to at a tender age of 19. We were treating our boyfriends like they were husbands because that is what we believed was our next step in life. I had a child at 19, and as I had witnessed, the father is supposed to father the child by being present. My father was in my household, and so were the majority of the fathers in our project complex in the NYCHA projects that I grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York. Things were starting to change in the late 70s. Young girls were moving out on their own, whether they were married or not. It was a sign of the times, and we were following each other. Believe it or not, it felt good, and we believed we were progressing. Young girls were getting their own apartments with this newly introduced ADC, or Aid to Dependent Children, welfare program that had become available to young black women, paying the rent for unwed mothers as long as we claimed that the father was absent. I loved visiting my young friends' apartments who moved on up before I had a chance to, because it showed me what was possible. I particularly loved the living room setup. It reminded me of my upbringing, where the living room was a place to make family memories. I loved the enclosed, tight space of the living rooms because they were always colorful, neat, and well put together. I couldn't wait until I got my first apartment so I could set up my living room, decorated all warm and cozy. That was my vision. I didn't realize the difficulty of setting up a living space and being grown. But I can't take that time back, and I wouldn't want to. This particular evening, now, 2023, I was transcended in time and I felt nostalgic. That good feeling returned as I sat in my professionally done cozy living room 40 years later as I listened to house music from the 90s, Megamix, play on YouTube. I brought a plant earlier for the first time, see it right there, in about a year, and when I looked upon the plant, I remembered and felt as though I was sitting in my friend's living room all over again, imagining the future. The plant and the living room made me think of a newborn child. You know the feeling a mother gets when she holds her child for the first time? Have you ever been sick and after a while you were well? If anyone experienced COVID-19, as I did, and thank God recuperated, then once again felt really, really well, then you know the feeling I was feeling that night. Although I was reminiscing, I was truly present this night in my living room. I really loved this cozy setting I had created 40 years later. Snap! I had to include a picture of the plant in my green living room. It's the image for this podcast, and if you watch the YouTube channel, which is the one I'm recording now, be aware, Dr. Cynthia Marie Whitley is the cover for this podcast. You will see the plant in my cozy setting. Just before I brought the plant, I spotted this extremely healthy plant in this woman's cart. I know a healthy plant when I see it. Its leaves were firm and dark green. Where did you get that fox foliage plant? That is my favorite plant. She pointed to the entrance of Trader Joe's. The price was so reasonable that I had to purchase it. The leaves on the plant had a thickness to them, making the leaves look three-dimensional. Once upon a time, I didn't think I could grow this type of plant, but now I know I can grow it confidently. So now I see a spiritual angle to this message. I didn't see it at first. I had taken a break. I meant to break from growing plants. During this break, I focused a lot on my spiritual practice, as lonely as it was without a spiritual community. Although I thought about plants and missed their presence in my home, I understood that some type of break was needed. You could come in here and it looked like a jungle for years, a beautiful jungle though. Prior to me removing all my plants from my house, my plants had become infested with plant bugs, I assumed, from the soil and repotting. I never experienced this problem in 50 years of raising plants. It was annoying and irritating, swatting and spraying the bugs. It reminded me of the plagues that invaded Egypt. I had no choice but to put the plants to sleep and rid them from my premise. All except for one bonsai plant survived. The presence of the bugs or the pestilence pushed me into spiritual practice, which I might not have done otherwise. Had the bugs not appeared, I would have stayed trapped, not growing, and expanding my territory. Yes, the feeling of entrapment can appear subtly, and often if spiritual practices are not in place. In the words of Michael Beckwith, spiritual practice is not an option. It's not optional. In retrospect, I did ask God to expand my territory like Jabez from the Bible. Remember in 1 Chronicles 4:10 where it says, "And Jabez called out to the Lord of Israel, 'Oh, that you may truly bless me and extend my territories.'" Some of them say enlarge my territory verses. And God granted his request. So I am grateful for the constructiveness of time. Thank you for giving me time. Thanks so that your will may be expressed through me. Just like you, I may not understand the significance of every event that happens in my life or in our lives, but I know that when we ask God to lead in our lives, events take place so that the answer to the prayer can manifest. So what is it that you want to happen in your life? Ask God and stand back and watch as he brings circumstances together so the manifestation of our good desires can come through. Peace and shalom. Shalom. Where my tribe at? Where my people at? I've been a storyteller all my life. I love telling stories, but I come now equipped with information, with self-help information from my study of more than 40 years. I have a lot to give and I want to give it to you. So listen to my stories on my podcast, on my YouTube channel, and in my books. Yes, in my books. Come to see where I'm coming from so that you can see how what I have to put forward can benefit you, how it can increase and have you increase in your life. Shalom.